Good evening, Commissioners. I'm really pleased to introduce Megan McPherson, our Director of Public Affairs and Communications, who's going to provide the informational report to you on Measure B. So with that, Megan.
Great, thanks, Mike. Good evening, Chair Horton and members of the Transportation Commission. City staff is visiting all of our boards and commissions to provide an update on Measure B so that you as commissioners and in your official capacity as public officials will have some more background. In case you're asked and if you have any questions, this is a great opportunity to get that information clarified. And I wanted to start out by telling you that I'm here in my capacity working for the city. I'm just strictly providing information about the measure so you can make an informed decision. I'm not here to advocate either way. What we're going to cover tonight is our current budget, what's changed, 5-year forecast, the cuts we've made, the community priorities we identified through Engage Roseville, and also what Measure B is about. And first we'll start with our current budget. The city of Roseville has one of the largest municipal budgets in the region, and there's very good reason for this. We're a full-service city providing more services than any other municipality in the region. Most of our $500 million budget involves the utilities, which is the part in blue. Roseville has 4 utilities, and all are self-sustaining and don't draw any money from the general fund, like most of the transportation work that you work with here on the commission as well. Those are electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. Our general fund is $139 million, and this pays for police, fire, public works, parks, recreation, libraries, trails, and general government services. The quality of life services that people prioritize here in Roseville. Just a small portion of our general fund, of that green part, is discretionary, meaning the council determines how to spend that money. More than half of our discretionary dollars already go towards public safety, which is the City Council's #1 priority. And the part that is unrestricted, the other half of that dark green, that pays for parks, recreation, libraries, public works, those kinds of things. Just to make sure that you understand that we've gotten some questions, so can that be spent on anything within those realms? Absolutely. The remaining $44 million, the light green of the general fund, is restricted, and we receive those funds for specific purposes. They come through grants, developer fees, gas tax revenue, landscape and lighting districts, community facility districts, and fees for service. The sources of income we have for the general fund is important to understand because there are some misperceptions about tax revenues. To start with, 69% of the total general fund revenues come from sales and property taxes. We receive $35 million in property taxes, which is steady and healthy, and we receive $57 million in sales tax revenues, which is slowing and is more volatile depending on how the economy is doing. Taxes are a subject that can be misunderstood, especially when people don't realize that the city receives only a small portion of the taxes they pay. Most of the taxes we pay as residents of Roseville go to the state and some to the county. So we'll start with sales tax. The city receives 1 cent of the 7.25 cents per dollar we pay in sales tax. 86% of the sales tax we pay goes to the state and some to the county. People assume that because we have the Auto Mall and Galleria here, that Roseville receives all of the tax income generated here, and that's simply not the case. And regarding property tax, the city receives only 15% of what a typical household pays on their property tax bill. And how does that break down? Typically, property tax is about 1% of the value of a home. And for an average Roseville home assessed at $410,000, owners pay about $4,100 in property tax. You might think that amount sounds low, but with Prop 13, the property, that is an average assessment in Roseville. And only about $615 of that goes to the city, which means 85% of our property taxes go to the state, including for schools. Creating a diverse tax base has been a strategic, intentional move by the City Council over the years, and this greatly benefits residents because they get more than they pay for. The cost to provide city services funded by sales and property taxes is $1,867. On an average basis, the city receives $750 from every household through property and sales tax revenue each year. That means that sales tax revenues generated by visitors and businesses fund the remaining $1,117 per household, which leads us to the next slide. We're asked, how does the city make up for that funding? Fortunately, in Roseville, our residents don't bear the full cost of the city services they receive. Because of Roseville's affordable and reliable utilities, our excellent public safety, our amenities like parks, recreation, and libraries, we're a desirable place to locate a business. And because Roseville has a strong retail sector with the Auto Mall, shopping at the Galleria, fountains, Costco, attractions like Topgolf, we attract many visitors to our city. And so this all adds up. In fact, 60% of the cost to provide services to our residents is paid by visitors and businesses. So that's a benefit for our residents. And people are wondering, well, what's changed? Why are we at this point where we're talking about budget challenges? There's many factors outside our control that affect both our revenues and our expenses in adverse ways. On the revenue side, the first item outside our control is that consumers are buying services when they used to buy goods. Things like buying a lawn service instead of a lawnmower, or buying a Netflix service to stream movies instead of buying DVDs. Buying Amazon Music streaming instead of a CD, or buying a gym membership instead of equipment for a home gym. The difference is that services are not taxed in California, and goods are. So the fewer goods people buy, the less sales tax revenue the city receives. Another item outside our control is online shopping. And most of us have purchased something online in the last year. And how does this affect our sales tax revenue? The way the state distributes sales tax from online purchases is different than if the same item were purchased at a register in Roseville. While Roseville receives a penny for each dollar spent on an item purchased at a register here, the city receives a fraction of a cent when the item is purchased online. This is because this is due to the way the state divides sales tax revenue from online transactions. It means an annual loss of $3 to $4 million to Roseville, and that number will keep growing if the laws remain unchanged, and presumably our online shopping habits are going to continue to be pretty robust. On the expense side, many items are outside our control as well. We have to comply with state and federal mandates regarding such things as privacy, security, zoning, public records, and accessibility that are all paid through our general fund. Operational costs have gone up, such as the Affordable Care Act, minimum wage, and stormwater. Costs to maintain and improve our infrastructure have risen as well. And though our pension liability is increasing, it's the only expense that we'll see a drop in the future. We have read comments that the city should just cut pensions to solve this budget issue, but the reality is that the city is obligated by law to pay them. And this means that pension obligations must be paid before discretionary expenses are paid. Pensions can't be reduced retroactively. The city's taken the steps available to contain costs, but we can't reduce pension obligations for current employees on a go-forward basis without a change in state law. And we spent a little bit of time on this because it's a real important issue for our community to understand. And as we look out at the 5-year forecast, we do this forecast for several reasons. It puts our staff financial recommendations into context. It puts council decisions into context. And it's an exercise to identify and understand the factors or drivers that affect our revenue and expenses. This exercise, when repeated regularly, improves our ability to budget more accurately. And we are within about 2% of our expenses to revenues each year, which is about as accurate as you can be without living too close to the edge on that budget side. The forecast is based on carrying forward into the next 5 years the service levels proposed for this year, fiscal year 18-19. With that, we anticipate a structural deficit of up to $13 million annually in the next 5 years. This is a zoomed-in version of the chart, which is why it appears to start at $120 million. I'd like to share some of the detail behind this forecast. Muni Services, which is our tax consultant, has forecasted that our sales tax increase per year will be increasing at a decreasing rate, about 2.7% average increase. Property tax is forecasted to grow at a rate above 2% due to new growth and higher assessed values when homes turn over. And we forecast pension costs based on the latest information from the CalPERS actuaries. We forecast retiree health costs based on our funding policy and information from the city's actuary. And we did end the retiree health benefit 4 years ago. When we take the recession into account, the situation is worse. If the next recession is half as bad as the last one, This is what we're expecting, a doubling of the structural deficit to $26 million. A recession means less spending, less tax revenue, declining home values, and less property tax revenue. It's important to note some of the key things that are not included in the forecast, which could greatly affect the city's finances. Our 5-year forecast includes revenue and expenses based on current law and policy. We've not addressed events that may or may not happen in the future in the forecast. Those include a potential repeal of the gas tax, which is Proposition 6, which means a $3 to $4 million annual loss in funding to the city for the next 10 years. Passage of a half-cent local sales tax measure, which could mean an additional $16 million to $19 million a year in revenue. And a statewide sales tax on services, which is impossible to determine how it would affect our city, depending on the details. Redevelopment, federal and state mandates, and a recession are all unknown, but are factors that would affect our budget. Now we'll take a look at the expenses that we do have control over and what we've done these past 10 years or so to reduce our costs, like any business or family would do in light of budget challenges. People are surprised to hear that we've been at this for 10 years because we've managed to make it so that is not too noticeable to the public. First of all, factors within the city's control include our workforce reduction. We began that in 2007, and we've gone from 778 full-time general fund employees in 2007 to 698 in 2018. In that time, the city grew by more than 30,000 new residents, and this resulted in a 30% staff reduction per capita. Employees now are funding 100% of the employees' share of pension costs, and we eliminated the defined benefit plan for retiree health care in 2014, which I just mentioned, for new employees. We've also set our salary level targets at median in the labor market, reducing salaries on average by 10%, or overall by 10%. We also reduced the rate of increases within each salary range, so we slowed our merit increases by 50%. On an operational basis citywide, we made sure we're operating at maximum efficiency for the services we're providing, and this has been verified by independent audits. In fact, our seasoned workforce allows us to work more efficiently than what the consultants who did the audits usually see. This is likely going to change because we have about 36% of our current workforce eligible to retire in the next 5 years. And that's following years of baby boomer retirements already. So the newer workforce that we get in is not going to have the experience and efficiency kind of built up from all those years that our retirees do. So we're going to be likely needing to hire more workers to maintain the same service levels, if the budget can handle that. In the interest of time, I'll quickly run through the slides of cuts and want you to know you can see the full list at roseville.ca.us/engage-roseville. Public safety has taken many hits. You can see we actually have a reduction in our police officers, and we've reduced positions in fire as well. Public Works has made reductions as well. Street maintenance, storm drain maintenance, flood control projects, traffic engineering. Parks, recreation, and libraries have reduced service levels quite a bit these last 10 years. Some ways are more noticeable than others, such as our libraries closing on Fridays and changes to the maintenance schedule at the parks. The past 10 years, staff has recommended cuts to services and compensation. And until recently, most of these cuts weren't noticeable to the public. But last year, with the reality of even more cuts ahead as revenue slowed and expenses rose, the council directed staff to work extensively with the community to gain input on the community's most important priorities. This was done through an effort called Engage Roseville. It was a year-long process, and you can see the icons at the bottom of that are all the ways that we reached out to educate the community, gathering thousands of ideas and opinions. We wanted to ensure that anyone could participate, no matter if they had a lot of time or a little time, no matter if they were embarrassed to speak publicly or not, and they didn't even have to live here. Maybe they just worked here, so that they could weigh in on priorities here as well. We sent direct mailers to 60,000 households in Roseville. We established a community priority advisory committee that met for 8 months. We did 5 flash vote polls with thousands of participants. We invited everyone, all Roseville residents over 18, to an in-person community conversation with instant smartphone polling. And we provide an opportunity through Balancing Act for anyone to balance the city's budget and provide comments. These were the recommendations that resulted, along with the list of priorities by department that are available at the website, roseville.ca.us/engageroseville. One of the key ones that leads to why we're here today is the last one. And the input from the community was to pursue ways to increase revenue instead of cutting or eliminating services. And that's what brings us here to Measure B. It's what the City Council, which is what brought the City Council to allow the community to decide by placing Measure B on the November ballot. So the community input expressed a desire to have an opportunity at least to raise revenue instead of only looking at cutting services. The title is Protecting Roseville's Public Safety, Roads, and Essential Services Measure. It's a half-cent transaction and use or sales tax increase. It's a general tax requiring majority approval of 50% plus one voters. It would take effect April 1st, 2019, and would remain in place until ended by voters. We've been asked why is that provision in there, and it's because the problem doesn't go away. The only thing that changes in terms of the laws and the way that we're forecasting our revenue now is that pension obligation payments will go down in the future, but all the other revenue and cost pressures remain in place. It's estimated to generate $16 million to $19 million annually, and the state can't take any of the revenues generated by Measure B. All the revenue goes to the general fund. It can fund things like maintaining neighborhood police patrols, fire protection, emergency response times, crime suppression and investigation, street and pothole repair, parks, recreation, and libraries, jobs creation, and economic improvement programs, and that's in the private sector, and senior and youth services as well. It includes a Citizens Oversight Committee that reviews revenues and expenditures. The terms, qualifications, duties, and scope of this committee are to be determined by the City Council if the measure passes. Independent audits will be presented to City Council annually, and all information would be made available for public review. This is all included in the ballot measure. Some facts that we've been asked about regarding our sales tax here in Roseville. Wanted to review as well. Roseville's current sales tax of 7.25% is the minimum allowed by state law. With a half-cent increase, Roseville would still be equal or less than most in the region. And this would affect kind of our daily lives by increasing the cost of a $10 meal by 5 cents, and a $100 retail purchase would increase by 50 cents. We're estimating, based on spending, and I have all those figures as well if you want to see how we came up with this, that this would cost a family of 4 $67 a year. This is what Measure B states. It's one sentence, which is required by law that it be one sentence. It's very long. It's in the form of a question, and it's within the word limit as well. But this includes the items that I just reviewed. And information, as I said, on the outreach, as well as these facts is included on our website.